Picture this, a guy, let's call him Kazuya, is sitting alone in his studio apartment at 11 at night, surrounded by instant ramen cups, a pile of unwashed laundry that has achieved its own kind of sentience, and the kind of darkness that doesn't just come from forgetting to turn the lights on. It is the darkness of a man who has been rejected, not fired from a job, rejected, not didn't get into grad school, rejected by a girl. The one he thought was it. And what is he doing right now at 11 p.m. in the dark, alone? He is on his phone, scrolling through her social media, watching her stories, watching her laugh at something another man just said in a video she posted an hour ago, like she is already 100% fine and over it, while he is sitting in the dark with a cold bowl of ramen and approximately 11 unprocessed emotions trying to share the same chest cavity. And what does Kazuya do? He closes the app. He opens it again. He closes it. He opens it again. He puts the phone face down on his desk and stares at the ceiling for 20 seconds. Then he picks up the phone. He opens the app. He watches it again from the beginning. You already know this guy because you have been this guy. Or at least you have seen this guy somewhere. In a group chat, in a university dorm hallway, in the mirror at some point during a rough week. And if you genuinely have not, first of all, congratulations, and second of all, you are either very lucky or very dishonest, and statistically speaking, it is more likely to be the second one. Now here's where the story gets genuinely interesting, because Kazuya Kinoshita, college freshman, passionate anime fan, proud owner of biceps that have never once made anyone feel physically threatened, does not simply wallow forever. Well, he wallows for exactly the right amount of time, the way all of us wallow when something genuinely bad happens, and we are not yet emotionally ready to admit that it is fully, completely, irreversibly over. He eats bad food. He stops going to the gym, a routine he had maintained for almost 3 weeks and was very proud of. He tells his friends he is fine and then is visibly not fine within about 4 minutes of any conversation. He replays the breakup in his head every single night with the obsessive attention to detail that, if redirected, could probably get him into a prestigious graduate program. He goes through all the stages. Denial, where he convinces himself she will text. Anger, where he decides she was not even that great to begin with, a position he's able to hold for approximately 45 seconds, before his brain pulls up a highlight reel that completely destroys the argument. Bargaining, where he considers texting her something casual and natural and totally not desperate, and then spends 3 hours crafting a message that he ultimately does not send. And then finally, after about 3 days of this, he lands somewhere between depression and a very specific kind of bored recklessness that tends to produce terrible decisions. And that is when he does something that either makes him the most creative or the most catastrophically stupid man alive. He rents a girlfriend. No, wait. Before you close this video, listen. This is a real thing. A verified, legally operating, professionally managed, completely above-board website offering rental girlfriend services in Japan. Think of it less like hiring someone to pretend to love you and more like hiring a very skilled actress to perform the role of a supportive partner for a fixed number of hours at a fixed hourly rate with clear terms, no ambiguity, and a review system that functions exactly like a restaurant on a delivery app. It is not sketchy. It is, if anything, disturbingly professional. And Kazuya, at approximately 2 in the morning, 3 days after the breakup, sitting in the dark in yesterday's clothes, found it. One click led to another. The algorithm, which has always known things about us that we don't know about ourselves, led him exactly here. He scrolled. He told himself he was just browsing. He told himself this was purely academic curiosity. He was absolutely lying to himself. And then he saw her profile name, Chizuru, Ichi knows, age, same as him, rating, 5 stars on every single review, not a single one below 5, going back months. The kind of review consistency that suggests either genuine excellence or a very elaborate system of fraud. And given what comes next, we can confirm it was the first one. And the profile photo. I need you to understand something here. This photo did things to Kazuya's nervous system that probably should be studied by medical professionals. It was not provocative. It was not even trying particularly hard. It was just a girl looking slightly to the left of the camera with an expression that managed to be simultaneously warm and untouchable, like sunlight on the other side of a window. Long dark hair, a face that the universe had apparently spent extra time on. A smile that existed in the photo as only the suggestion of itself, like she was thinking about something pleasant but hadn't fully committed to showing you what it was. Kazuya stared at this photo for about 30 seconds. Then he booked her, full rate, Saturday afternoon to evening, paid immediately, felt a full cocktail of excitement, shame, regret, justification, more shame, a brief moment of what might have been courage, and then shame again. The date was set for the following Saturday. He spent the 6 intervening days oscillating between this is genuinely the worst decision I have ever made in my life and wait, but what if it is actually kind of great? Spoiler for anyone who needs it early, it was kind of great. And also, it led to the single most complicated, most embarrassing, most unexpectedly meaningful chain of events in this man's entire young life. Buckle up, this is a long one. Let us rewind properly and meet everyone before the chaos begins. Kazuya Kinoshita grew up in a regular family in Tokyo, the kind of regular that is pleasant but not particularly memorable. Parents who worked, a grandmother who showed up to everything, an apartment that was fine, a childhood that was fine. He was not popular, but he was not unpopular either. He liked anime, video games, the kind of friendships that involve a lot of sitting in someone's room not talking, just existing in comfortable proximity. He had never had a girlfriend. He had wanted one for a very long time, with the specific aching want of someone who has watched a lot of romantic content and is fully aware of what he is missing, but had never quite managed to close the gap between wanting and having. And then, in the first semester of university, through a sequence of events involving a shared class, a study group, and one afternoon where he managed to say exactly the right thing at exactly the right moment, something he has not been able to recreate since, he got one. Her name was Mami Nanami. When I say Mami, I need you to understand that this girl was operating on a different tier of existence. She was the kind of beautiful that does not seem real in ordinary lighting. High cheekbones, a symmetrical face that looked like something rendered by a graphics engine that had been given unlimited processing power, a smile that could cause minor traffic incidents, the type of girl who walks into a room and every male within 100 meters simultaneously lose the thread of whatever they were saying mid-sentence without understanding why. And she was funny and quick, and she laughed at his jokes in a way that made him feel, for the first time in his life, like maybe he was actually funny, like maybe he was actually worth paying attention to, like maybe he was, if not the main character, at least a character with some significance in the story of the world. For a few weeks, he was absolutely genuinely living the dream, holding her hand in public and feeling the specific electricity of that. Texting back and forth at 2 in the morning about nothing and feeling like everything. Walking next to her and experiencing in real time what it was like to feel chosen, and then she dumped him. No big fight, no dramatic confrontation, no scene, just a conversation on a Tuesday afternoon where she said she was not sure this was working out and she wanted to try seeing someone else. The way she said it was almost casual. The translation of that sentence, for anyone who has not had their heart removed through their chest and examined under bad lighting: she found someone better, someone who had his life together, someone whose greatest personal achievement was not leveling a character in a mobile game. She was not cruel about it. That almost made it worse. Kazuya said, okay. He walked home. He lay down on his floor. Yeah, not his bed, his floor, because the floor felt more appropriate to the situation. And he stared at the ceiling for 4 hours. In his head, he was replaying every single moment of their relationship, every time she smiled at him, every time her hand was in his, every time he thought, genuinely, earnestly thought, that maybe, just maybe, he had finally found someone who saw something worth seeing in him. And then, because his brain is an instrument of torture, it started playing the alternate timeline, the one where she was with someone else, laughing at someone else's jokes, looking at someone else the way he wanted her to look at him. The man cried for approximately 6 hours. Not that we are judging, we are purely neutrally observationally documenting. 3 days post-apocalypse, still wearing the same shirt, living on convenience store food, and the specific emotional sustenance of watching the same breakup scene from his favorite anime repeatedly. Kazuya did what all broken young men do in the digital age. He fell down an internet rabbit hole. He was not looking for anything specific, he was just clicking. One article about dealing with breakups, one forum thread, one sidebar advertisement, one click, and then he was on Diamond Girlfriends, and he was scrolling through profiles, and he was telling himself it was research, and then he was looking at a 5-star rated profile photo of a girl named Chizuru Ichinozi, and then he was booking her, and the rest is history. Saturday arrived. Kazuya showed up to the cafe they had agreed on 14 minutes early. He sat at a corner table. He fixed his hair using the reflection from his phone screen. He rehearsed what he was going to say. He rehearsed it again. He ordered a coffee he did not actually want and then held it without drinking it. He thought about leaving 4 times. He stayed all 4 times. And then Chizuru walked in and every single thought in his head was replaced by white noise. Now I want to paint this scene correctly because it matters. She was not overdressed. She was not performing a rival. She was just wearing normal clothes and had her hair a certain way, and she moved through the cafe the way people move when they are completely comfortable in their own skin, which is a quality that is rarer than it sounds and immediately visible when you see it. She found him. He was easy to spot, being the only person in the cafe who looked like he was waiting for a parole hearing, and she smiled. Not a customer service smile. A real, warm, genuine smile that landed on him like something physical, like a hand on a shoulder, like being told without words that this was going to be okay. She sat down. She introduced herself properly. She asked him about himself with the kind of attention that made him feel like the answer mattered. She laughed at his jokes. Actual laughs, not polite ones, the kind that you cannot entirely control. By the time they left the cafe and headed to the aquarium, Her idea, she said, she had always liked aquariums, that there was something calming about large quantities of water and fish that had no awareness of how much of their life was being spent being watched. Kazuya had forgotten that this was a transaction, that there was a timer running, that the warmth he felt was a service he had paid for. At the aquarium, she grabbed his hand, just casually, naturally, like it was the most normal thing in the world. Kazuya looked down at their interlocked hands and experienced, in the middle of a public aquarium on a Saturday afternoon, a full emotional collapse that he somehow managed to keep entirely on the inside. They walked through the jellyfish, past the sharks, by the giant turtles moving through water with the total piece of animals that have figured something out that humans haven't. Hey, he did not say anything about the hand, because saying something would have made it weird, and he refused to make it weird. When they said goodbye at the station, he bowed approximately 4 times, thanked her 5 or 6 more times than was necessary, and walked home in a state that scientists would probably classify as something between happiness and a very pleasant form of delusion. Then he got home, and he made the mistake that men always make when something is going well, which is immediately look for the information that will make them feel worse about it. He went back to her profile, he read the reviews, and very slowly, the warm, floating feeling in his chest started being replaced by something colder and heavier. One review mentioned she held their hand at the aquarium, described it as really believable, said she was very professional. Another said she made excellent eye contact and smiled at exactly the right moments, called it a 10 out of 10 performance. A third said the way she grabbed their hand while they walked. You would genuinely believe she liked you. Great actress. Every single moment he had been replaying in his head like a highlight reel. She was running a highlight reel. A professionally curated, time-tested, 5-star rated highlight reel that she had performed for multiple men before him and would perform for multiple men after him. The aquarium, the hand-holding, the smile, the laugh, the warmth, all of it. Service, delivery. Kazuya, in his wounded pride and deeply misplaced outrage, left a 1-star review. He felt for about 8 seconds like this was satisfying. Then he felt significantly worse. Then he opened his banking app, looked at the balance, made a decision that his father and his future self would both have opinions about. He booked her again because he had things to say, and he was going to say them to her face. They met at the same aquarium. She switched on the warmth. He lasted 4 seconds before starting on what he came to say. He asked if the job made her feel lonely, going out with guys she did not actually like, spending time pretending. She told him with the professional smile fully deployed that she loved this job. He pushed. He reminded her, in a voice that was a bit too loud for a public aquarium, that this was not a real date. He said he had read the reviews. He said he knew about the hand-holding. He wanted her to just be genuine. The smile held for about 7 more minutes. Then she grabbed his wrist, pulled him behind a giant cylindrical fish tank, and the smile dropped. The real 𝐂𝐨𝐧𝐭𝐚𝐭𝐨 entered the conversation. Her voice changed completely. Not loud, not angry exactly. Precise. Like a surgeon using a very small and very sharp instrument. She told him he had booked her, paid her, and was now complaining that she was being professional. She asked if he understood how ridiculous that was. Kazuya opened his mouth, closed it. His whole prepared speech evaporated in real time. She was right. He had paid for a professional experience and then complained that it had been professional. The specific embarrassment of that is the kind that does not go away quickly. He stood there absorbing it while she watched him absorb it. Then his phone rang. His grandmother had collapsed. Nagomi Kinoshita, 73 years old, owner and sole operator of the family business her late husband had built. The person in Kazuya's life who had always just been there. Not dramatically, not with any particular fanfare, just consistently and wholly and reliably there. She was the one who called not to ask about grades, but just to hear his voice. The one who sent him food he hadn't asked for. And the one thing she had been wanting for several years, with the particular urgency that older people develop when they become aware of time, was to see Kazuya find someone. She wanted someone else to see the thing she saw in him. She wanted him to be seen. Kazuya ran to the hospital. 𝐂𝐨𝐧𝐭𝐚𝐭𝐨, timer still running, followed. Because she had been paid for 2 more hours, and she took her work seriously. In the hospital hallway, they ran into Kazuya's parents. His mother whispered, "Still no girlfriend." And Kazuya, mind split between his grandmother and the woman standing beside him, whose rental timer was still technically running, said 6 words he had not planned to say. He said, "This is 𝐂𝐨𝐵, my girlfriend." His father said, "What?" And 𝐂𝐶𝐵 extended her hand, smiled the full professional warmth, and introduced herself gracefully, warmly, with the kind of poise that makes people immediately trust you. Both of Kazuya's parents converted from skepticism to acceptance in about 4 seconds. When they went in to see Nagomi, the old woman looked at 𝐂𝐶𝐵, and her eyes immediately filled happy tears. She grabbed 𝐂𝐶𝐵's hands, called her beautiful, called her wonderful, said please have children soon. She wanted to meet them before she was gone. Then Nagomi asked the question. She asked it with the direct simplicity of an elderly person who has decided that at her age she no longer has any obligation to to be indirect. She asked if they had made love yet. Kazuya's soul exited his body through the top of his head. Chizuru, without a single visible moment of hesitation, said they wanted their first time to be really special, that they were waiting for the right moment. The sound Nagomi made in response could only be described as pure joy condensed into a single noise. She announced that she was going to find her hospital friends to share the news. What followed was approximately 20 minutes of the two of them trying to prevent Nagomi from broadcasting this information to the entire hospital wing. There was a curtain. There was Chizuru briefly disguising herself as an elderly patient. There was a moment where they had to hide in an empty room together when they heard Nagomi approaching, and there, in a dark hospital room, the rental timer technically still running, Chizuru Ichinose looked at Kazuya Kinoshita and waited for him to come up with a plan. He did not have one. What he had instead was an uncontrollable need to explain himself, not the rental situation, the whole situation. Why he had done it, what Nagomi meant to him, what it meant that she was in this hospital and had cried those specific happy tears. He talked for several minutes about his grandmother and the business she had kept alive since his grandfather died, about how she had never asked him for anything except to be okay, about how she was not going to be around forever, and about how seeing her face like that, those happy tears, because she thought he had found someone, that was the thing he had been trying to give her. Just that. He stopped talking. He looked at the floor. He felt how stupid all of this was. Chizuru was quiet. Then she told him her grandmother was in this same hospital, that she did not know about the job either. They were in the same situation. And then she said if he ever felt lonely, he could call her. That was what she was there for. She meant it professionally, but in a dark hospital room, after everything he had just said, it did not quite land that way. And later that night, Kazuya deleted the 1-star review and gave her 5 stars. His fingers made the decision before his brain finished the thought. On her phone across the city, Chizuru saw the notification. Something that might have been the beginning of a smile moved across her face. Neither of them mentioned it afterward. Monday morning, trash day. Kazuya came out of his apartment in his worst possible configuration. Yesterday's clothes, hair doing something geological, holding a garbage bag of ramen cups, and walked directly into Chizuru, who lived in the apartment next to his, who had apparently always lived in the apartment next to his. They stared at each other. She told him not to acknowledge her at school, not to involve himself in her life, that they were complete strangers. She went back inside. He stood in the hallway for 90 seconds. Then his grandmother called. She was being discharged. She wanted to come visit. She wanted to see Chizuru. He knocked on the wall. No response. He went to her door. She got the terms document. She pointed to Rule 7. She closed the door. Nagami arrived 90 minutes later, knocked on every door in the hallway, spoke to 2 neighbors, and appeared through some mechanism that can only be described as grandmother navigation at exactly the right door. And Chizuru, because she is not actually a terrible person, opened her own door and let Nagomi in. With homemade food and the full professional warmth, Nagomi burst into tears, happy tears again. Kazuya arrived back at the hallway to find his grandmother inside Chizuru's apartment being fed home cooking, and he stood there and felt something he could not name, gratitude and guilt, and something that, if examined, might be dangerous. After Nagomi left, Kazuya gave Chizuru an envelope. Every Wednesday, hospital visits, full rate. She could have said no, she took the envelope. Every Wednesday, strangers at school at all other times, purely transactional, rental girlfriend, nothing more. Both of them shook on it. Both of them told themselves they understood exactly what they had just agreed to. Both of them, on some level neither was prepared to examine, were already wrong. Wednesdays became the rhythm of his life in a way he had not anticipated. He would pay. She would appear, professional, warm, precisely calibrated, and they would visit Nagomi, who was now planning the seating arrangements for their future wedding with the quiet efficiency of a woman who has decided something is happening and is simply managing the timeline. They would walk back, the timer would expire, she would leave, and Kazuya would go back to his apartment and think about the way she laughed at something Nagomi said, or the way she tilted her head when she was listening, or any of a dozen small specific things that he was absolutely not supposed to be cataloging and was absolutely cataloging. He told himself this was fine. He told himself that plenty of people notice things about people they are not emotionally invested in. He told himself he was simply observant. He was, to use the technical term, lying to himself on an industrial scale. Then his friends found out about Chizuru, not who she was, just that Kazuya, whom they considered a reliable source of evidence that nice guys finish last, had somehow acquired a girlfriend. They demanded a group outing, a bar, several friends. And because the universe keeps a very detailed list of things that would make any given situation most complicated and draws from it constantly, Mami was there. She arrived the way she always arrived everywhere, which is to say she made you notice it was happening. She said hello to everyone. She told Kazuya she was so happy for him, that she had completely moved on, that no one should make things awkward. Then she sat directly across from Chizuru and spent the next 20 minutes dismantling her, subtly, carefully, with the precision of someone who has done this before. before and who knows exactly how to do it, so that it does not look like it is being done. She mentioned to the table that Kazuya used to get so nervous holding hands that his palm would sweat. Wasn't that adorable, she said, as a funny little detail from their relationship, that he had never once made a confident decision about anything. She framed all of it as affection, old friend warmth, and the table laughed because it was framed well. Then Mami used the word vulgar, applied to Chizuru to her attitude, said it with a laugh like a joke, like everyone should take it the same way. The table went still. Chizuru put her drink down. She said she was sorry. She thought she had misheard. Could Mami say that again? Mami began to deflect. Chizuru said she had heard perfectly and was asking for the word to be repeated clearly, directly to her face. Mami smiled and said nothing, because the maneuver only works when nobody demands accountability for it, and Chizuru had just demanded it in front of everyone with complete composure. The moment passed. Kazuya had watched it all, and then he turned to Mami and said she didn't mean anything by it. You know how she is. He said it in the gentle, apologetic tone of a man who is still trying to manage the feelings of someone who hurt him, which is one of the most reliably self-defeating things a person can do. Chizuru went still in a different way. Not angry, something more like the quiet that happens right before you decide something. She collected her coat, said goodnight to the table, left. Mami pulled Kazuya aside later that night, when enough drinks had been consumed that his judgment was operating well below its modest standard capacity. She told him she had lied about the new boyfriend, said she had been thinking about him. Maybe they had made a mistake. She invited him back to her place. Kazuya felt every careful wall he had been building for weeks dissolve simultaneously. He said yes immediately. Then her phone rang. Her brother needed something. She said maybe another time. She left. Kazuya stood in the street and then thought about Chizuru, about her face when he said that to Mami, about how she had defended herself with such precision and he had immediately undercut it. He went home. He stood outside her door. He rang the bell. He apologized properly. Not a deflection apology. He told her she had done something exactly right and he had made it wrong. She told him she was not angry, that she was a rental girlfriend and it was not her place to be angry. He said, that is exactly what I am apologizing for. She told him that caring this much about one relationship was not pathetic. It meant he took love seriously. That was not a flaw. She closed the door. Something had changed. He wasn't sure what. He wasn't ready to examine it. Beach trip. The whole group and Mami, invited by an administrative oversight that was almost certainly deliberate. Kazuya, trapped by social architecture, invited Chizuru. She arrived at the beach and had an immediate and comprehensive impact on Kazuya's capacity for coherent thought. He tried to have normal conversations about normal things and managed, heroically, to produce sentences that were grammatically approximately correct. Mami worked the day, told stories. Mei pointed eye contact with Chizuru, and then in the late afternoon, she got Kazuya alone near the rock formation. She told him she missed him, that she had made a mistake. She asked whether he still had feelings for her. Kazuya felt an old wound reopen. The honest answer was yes, still yes. The yes had never gone anywhere. He had just put a cover over it. She had just lifted the cover. He opened his mouth. His phone rang, his grandmother calling to tell him she was being discharged. And while he was looking at his phone, he looked across the sand. He saw Chizuru at the water's edge, alone, not performing anything, not being warm at anyone, just standing there watching the water, existing as herself in a way that he almost never got to see because she was almost always performing something. Something about seeing her like that, unguarded, real, just a person at the edge of the ocean. He stopped the sentence he had been about to say to Mami in a way he could not entirely explain. Mami leaned in. Kazuya stepped back. He said he needed to get back. He walked across the sand and did not look at either of them for a while. Ferry ride home. Everyone tired and salt-stained. Chizuru was seasick, gripping the railing, pale, the professional composure nowhere to be found. Just a person who is genuinely uncomfortable. Kazuya stood near her, offered water, got waved off, tried again. His phone had a message from Mami. The right words in the right order, in exactly the right amount of casual, suggesting tonight was still possible. He stared at it. Then Chizuru's hand slipped. She went over the side. Kazuya did not think. He dropped the phone with Mami's message on the screen, and jumped into the ocean, off a moving ferry, in his clothes. Some because she was in the water and she was not surfacing fast enough and there was nothing else to consider. He got to her, got them both up, kept her head above water until the crew threw a line. When they dragged them both onto the deck, Kazuya was conscious for about 30 more seconds and then went limp. He had inhaled too much water. Chizuru knelt next to him and her professional composure disintegrated. Panic. Actual panic. The kind that happens when your body reacts before your brain has a chance to apply its usual controls. She checked his breathing. She started compressions. She talked to him while she did it, not calmly. She called him an idiot. She told him to breathe. She used his name in a way that was more than a client identifier. And when the compressions were not bringing him back back fast enough, she pressed her lips to his and breathed for him. Standard CPR protocol, completely correct procedure. Oh, that was what it was. She turned away before his eyes opened so he could not see her face in the moment between when he started breathing and when she put the composure back. In the ambulance, she sat next to him and replayed one thing. She had watched him look at his phone. She had watched him see the message. And then she had watched him drop the phone in the water without a second's consideration and jump. He had not calculated anything. He had just come. She sat in the ambulance and tried very hard to figure out what to do with that information. She was not succeeding. Recovery, hospital, friends, and then Ruka Sarashina entered this story the way a weather system enters a forecast. Not because anyone invited it, but because conditions created it. She was another rental girlfriend, younger, relentlessly cheerful. And she had worked out through a combination of observation and overheard conversation and the aggressive use of a medical monitor that Chizuru was a rental girlfriend and Kazuya was her client. She appeared at his hospital bed with an offer. She told him she wanted to be his real girlfriend. He pointed out they had known each other for approximately 11 minutes. She said that was 11 minutes more than she usually needed. Then she explained the cardiac condition. Her pulse almost never elevated, but near him, she had tested it with medical equipment. It elevated every time she produced the data. She was not going away. She had leverage. She had the specific energy of someone who has decided something and will not be deterred by normal social friction. Kazuya, in a decision he would begin regretting within 48 hours, agreed to try. He regretted it approximately 48 hours later when she started sending him daily schedules. The beach had produced at least one useful thing. 𝐂𝐨𝐴 sitting Kazuya down and telling him the truth. He had known Kazuya since they were children. He sat Kazuya down and said plainly, "You are in love with Chizuru. You jumped off a moving ferry for her. You had a message from mommy on your phone and you dropped it in the water without a second's thought because she was in the ocean." Well, that is not the behavior of a man who thinks of someone as a professional service. Kazuya started to construct an explanation. 𝐂𝐨𝐴 did not let him. He said the longer Kazuya kept pretending, the more people would get hurt, and the person most likely to end up hurt was Chizuru, who deserved better than being someone's transitional arrangement. Then he walked away and found Chizuru. He sat with her on the beach when the sun was getting low. He told her about the plant. When they were 9, 𝐂𝐨𝐴 had accidentally destroyed a plant Kazuya had been growing for 3 months. He had watched Kazuya replant it, water a dead root for 6 weeks, talk to it, refuse to accept that it was gone, and then one Tuesday in autumn, it had produced a single small green shoot, and within another month it had become the most remarkable plant either of them had ever seen. 𝐂𝐨𝐴 told Chizuru that this was Kazuya, that he would do that for anything he believed in, that he would water it regardless of evidence, regardless of how long it took, regardless of whether anyone told him he was being foolish, and that if she let him, he would do that for her. 𝐂𝐨𝐴 left. Chizuru sat for a while. The ocean moved, the light changed, and something inside her that had been very carefully maintained and very deliberately sealed began to show the first signs of a crack. Here is what the rental girlfriend profile does not tell you. Chizuru Ichinos was an acting student, not casually, with the kind of full-body commitment you only develop when something has been important to you for so long that it has become inseparable from who you are. She went to auditions, got rejected, went back, got rejected again, took acting classes, worked the part-time rental job to pay for classes and keep something left over for her grandmother's care. Her parents were not in the picture. Her grandfather was not in the picture anymore. He had died on the way back from buying something. The way people die sometimes in the middle of ordinary errands. And the way he had died and the thing he had said to her right before he died were things she carried in a very specific place inside her that she did not often let anyone near. Her grandmother Sayuri was a former actress, a real one with a body of work and a reputation and a warmth she had spent her whole life cultivating. And Sayuri was getting older. Her health was declining, and the one thing she kept saying every time Chizuru visited was that she wanted to see her on screen before she was gone. She wanted to see her granddaughter become what she had always believed she could become. Chizuru kept that sentence inside her and kept going through auditions. The rejections accumulated. The callback rate improved only slowly. The clock, on multiple levels, simultaneously kept running. Kazuya had been drafted, somewhat without fully agreeing to it, to help train a new rental girlfriend named Sumi Sakurasawa. Chizuru had asked him. Sumi was the kind of shy that was not a personality choice, but a genuine structural feature of how she processed the world. She communicated mostly by written note, could barely maintain eye contact, and had in her first practice dates managed to convey the conversational ease of someone attending their own surprise funeral. But she had something underneath the terror, a sincerity, a quality visible if you were patient enough to wait for it. And Kazuya, who had become patient about things without fully noticing when it happened, was good with her. He knew how to sit in silence without making it feel like a problem. He knew from extensive personal experience how to be with someone who was not entirely sure of themselves and make them feel like that was okay. Their practice sessions were, initially, a masterclass in how quiet two people can be in each other's company. Sumi would write notes on her phone and hold them up. Kazuya would respond out loud, she would nod. There would be long pauses that she found comfortable, and he found increasingly educational about how much of conversation he had previously been filling with noise rather than meaning. Slowly, she started speaking. Small sentences, careful words. She took him to an aquarium because she had done her research about what he liked and had spent an afternoon on this instead of just picking something random, which was a form of attention that registered on him as significant. They sat in a tunnel under the water with fish moving overhead, and she pointed at things and named them in a quiet voice. He watched her face as she watched the fish. She was genuinely, completely absorbed by them. No performance, just real interest. He liked her enormously in that moment, in a way that was completely unentangled and clear. The way you can like someone you are not in love with, which is its own straightforward kind of affection. When they came to the surface and she slipped on wet tile and he caught her arm and she said in barely a whisper that she was sorry, he told her she had nothing to be sorry for and meant it completely, and she looked at him with an expression he did not know what to do with, and then looked at the floor. On a rainy afternoon, they ended up at a bowling alley. Sumi, it turned out, had a competitive instinct that her general softness entirely concealed. She bowled 6 strikes in a row with the calm focus of someone who has been doing this for years and sees no reason to perform modesty about it. Kazuya stared at her. She wrote him a note that said, "I took lessons when I was small." He wrote back, "You could have mentioned that." She wrote, "You didn't ask." He stared at that response for a moment. He started laughing. She looked at him confused, and then at her own note, and then she started laughing too. The full, genuine, unguarded kind, not the careful kind she usually deployed. It lasted about 30 seconds. When it ended, they were both slightly surprised. She put the phone back in her pocket. He picked up his ball. They bowled for another hour, and she beat him by a significant margin and did not make a thing of it, and he respected that. The photo booth in the arcade was her idea. At the end of one of their last practice sessions, she wanted to see if she could do it without freezing. A practice for being in close physical proximity with a client without shutting down. They got in. The machine offered options. She chose a couple's pose practically without making eye contact with him when she did it, just pressing the button with the determination of someone completing a task. He stood next to her. The machine counted down. She was very still. He glanced at her. She was looking straight ahead at the lens with an expression of fierce concentration, like she was trying to solve something hard. He thought about saying something to make her relax. Then he thought that she did not need him to manage her experience. She was doing this herself. She pressed the button for the next pose, and the next. And when the strips came out and she looked at them, something in her expression shifted very slightly into something softer. She folded the strip carefully and put it in her bag. He got a copy. He looked at their faces in the photos, both slightly rigid, slightly real. He thought she would be fine. And he thought she would be more than fine, actually, when she found someone who understood that her quietness was not a deficiency, but a quality, and who was willing to wait in the silences with her. Ruka was, in the aftermath of everything, increasingly present and increasingly frustrated. She had been patient. She had given him room. She had watched him think about Chizuru continuously, while technically being in something with her. The love hotel incident was not Kazuya's finest navigational moment. Ruka arranged a scenario, blindfolded him on the pretense of a surprise, removed the blindfold in a love hotel. It was exactly what it looked like. Kazuya attempted to leave. She blocked him not physically but emotionally by asking him to actually explain for once what his true relationship with Chizuru was. Trapped and without a viable alternative, he told her most of the truth. She absorbed it, she cried a little, and then, instead of using the information as leverage, she offered him an arrangement. She would pull back from the pressure if he would be honest with her about where this was going. It was a more reasonable ask than anything he had been prepared for. He sat in the love hotel room and talked honestly for probably the first time in weeks. She listened. He left. The situation was no simpler, but something about having said real things out loud in a real room made him feel slightly less like he was drowning. Then Mommy did something nobody saw coming. She booked Chizuru, went on the website, found the profile, paid the rental rate. They met for what was officially a date. Chizuru arrived not knowing who the client was, found Mommy sitting across from her in a private karaoke room, and maintained her composure through an act of professional will that deserves some kind of award. Mommy put money on the table. She told Chizuru she had figured it out. The arrangement, the rental situation, all of it. She had seen the bag in Kazuya's apartment. She had seen Chizuru on the train. She had, with the specific intelligence of a person who is more perceptive than she generally lets on, assembled the picture. She told Chizuru she wanted her to stop. She said that seeing the false smile beside Kazuya, the manufactured warmth, was preventing him from finding something real. She said it with the concerned tone of a person acting in someone else's best interests. Chizuru looked at her across the karaoke room and said nothing for a long time. Then she asked Mommy one question. She asked how Mommy Mami felt about Kazuya. Mami deflected. Chizuru asked again, more directly. Mami said it was between them. It was not her business. And Chizuru, who had been listening carefully, said, I have spent months watching what kind of person he is. He is someone who jumps off a ferry into a burning building. Off a balcony. He just jumps because someone needs him. I want you to think about whether you deserve someone who jumps. Mami said nothing. Chizuru left. Mami sat in the karaoke room for a while afterward. She was doing some kind of calculation. She was not sure the answer came out the way she had expected. There was a mixer. His friends organized it. And by some coincidence, Chizuru was there, with friends he had not met, without the professional warmth deployed. Just herself at a social gathering, laughing at something someone said, not performing anything for anyone. He sat across the room from her and tried to behave like a person who had not noticed she was there. He was not successful at this. The evening went on. Drinks were consumed. Someone at the table began talking about Kazuya's girlfriend, about how incredible she was, about how she was clearly out of his league. Chizuru, sitting several seats away and not supposed to know him, listened to this with an expression that required effort to maintain. Someone started to reach toward her face. She shifted just enough without making it look deliberate. The moment passed. Kazuya caught her eye for a fraction of a second across the table. She looked away first. He looked away second. Both of them then looked at their drinks. He drank too much. More than he intended. The specific combination of the mixer and the pretending and the effort of being in the same room as Chizuru, while not being allowed to acknowledge it, had accumulated over the evening into a weight that the drinks temporarily relieved and then dramatically worsened. He walked home alone and found, several blocks from his apartment, that his legs were not fully cooperative. He sat on a step. The city went on around him. He felt, in the drunken and simplified way that this state produces, very clearly the outline of his actual situation. He was in love with a woman he paid by the hour who had done nothing to indicate this was reciprocated. He was technically in a relationship with a woman who genuinely cared about him and whom he could not manage to care about in return. He sat on the step and thought about all of this in the blurry, honest way that alcohol produces and sobriety usually prevents. Chizuru appeared. She had apparently seen him leave and followed because whatever she was willing to admit about her feelings, she was not willing to let him navigate home alone at midnight in this condition. She helped him up. She walked with him. He talked more than he should have, said things more honestly than he usually managed, and she listened without interrupting. When he needed to stop at a railing and be sick, she stood next to him and put her hand on his back. She rubbed small circles on his back while he was sick into a canal, and she did not make a thing of it. When he was done, he apologized. She told him to stop apologizing and walk. At his building, she helped him find his keys. Inside, she made him drink water. He looked at her in the kitchen light, the professional warmth nowhere in sight. Just a person who had come to get him because he needed getting. He said something. She told him to sleep. He did. He woke the next day with a headache and the clear memory of everything he had said, and the less clear but more significant memory of her hand on his back. In his refrigerator was a hangover remedy she had left before she went home. He looked at it for a long time, then he drank it. Then he sat at his kitchen table and acknowledged quietly to himself what he had actually been feeling for a while. One evening he was walking home and he saw Chizuru in the city with a man, well dressed, her age, clearly comfortable with her. They were laughing about something, going into a cinema, walking the way people walk when they are genuinely glad to be somewhere together. Kazuya told himself it was nothing. He told himself this for approximately 30 seconds. Then he followed them. This is not a behavior that Kazuya endorses or would be proud of in retrospect. He followed them because the part of his brain not operating on any identifiable logic had decided it needed more information. He ended up in a bathroom standing next to the man at the sink, and he heard him on his phone talking about Chizuru, saying he had helped her choose it, had helped her find the right one for her client. The birthday was coming up and she wanted it to be something real, and he had helped her narrow it down. Kazuya stood at the sink for a long time after the man left. The specific silence of a person realizing they have spent 3 hours surveilling the process of someone choosing their birthday present is a very particular kind of silence. He said several accurate but unflattering things to himself on the walk home. Chizuru was outside her building when he arrived. He confessed. The whole thing, start to finish. She called him an idiot. He agreed. She called him a complete, total He agreed before she finished. Then she took a box out of her bag. She said it was not a gift. It was a symbol of sorry for making him deal with Ruka largely by himself. Inside was a phone case. She had chosen it specifically for him. Had spent an afternoon doing that. The first time in his entire life that a girl had chosen something with him specifically in mind and then given it to him. He cried right there on the pavement. The quiet kind of tears that arrive when something good happens and you had stopped expecting good things to happen. She told him not to make it a thing. He said he was not making it a thing. She pointed out he was literally crying. He said it was just the first time. A long pause. She sat down beside him on the step. The snow started just lightly, and they sat there, the two of them, in the cold, because neither of them moved to leave, because something had shifted quietly, the way things shift when they are becoming something else. One afternoon, he found her at a baseball batting cage. It was not where he had expected to find her. He had gone out looking for a birthday present for her because the date was approaching, and he had no idea what to get her, and he had been circling the problem for several days without getting any closer to an answer. She was at the cage wearing a cap pulled low, feeding tokens into the machine, swinging at pitches with a focus and rhythm that suggested she had been here many times before. He watched for a while before she noticed him. When she did, she looked mildly embarrassed. Not at being seen, but at being seen doing something that was purely for herself rather than for any particular purpose. She explained without being asked that she came here when things were frustrating, that there was something about the mechanical repetition and the physical effort and the sound of 𝐵𝒐 meeting ball that helped her think about nothing for a while. She fed in another token. He sat on the bench and watched her swing. She hit the next 7 pitches cleanly. He understood watching her what 𝐂𝐨𝐵𝒄𝒊𝒆 had meant. She carried things in a way that left no visible evidence of the weight. But here, in this cage, she was putting the weight down for a few minutes. She offered him a turn. He stepped up. He missed the first 3 pitches completely, which she found visibly entertaining without saying so. He hit the 4th. She said nothing, but the corner of her mouth moved. He stayed for another 20 minutes. They did not talk about anything significant. That was somehow the most significant part of it. He took her to a school uniform date. It was a special request he had made when he booked her, feeling complicated about it, but doing it anyway. He wanted one afternoon from the high school experience he had never actually had. The one where you walk next to someone and people can see that you belong together. She arrived in the uniform looking like she always looked, which is to say, impossible to look directly at for more than a few seconds at a stretch. He was also wearing a uniform, which she found confusing and then found oddly appropriate. They walked through a shopping district in the afternoon light, and people looked at them, and Kazuya felt, in the specific way he had been hoping to feel, like a real person in a real story. She caught him looking at her multiple times. Each time she just said, "Stop staring." He said he wasn't staring. She said she could see you in the reflection. He conceded the point. They got churros. He wanted her to take a bite from his first, which he could not quite bring himself to say directly, and she said simply "here" and held hers out to him first, which meant the conversation he had been building toward was unnecessary, and also that she had, on some level, anticipated it. He thought about that for the rest of the afternoon. The photo booth was her suggestion this time, and this time they were both less rigid. The faces in the photos looked like people who were somewhere between where they had started and where they were going, which was, if you thought about it, exactly correct. Kazuya had been drafted, somewhat without fully agreeing to it, to help train a new rental girlfriend named Sumi Sakurasawa. Chizuru had asked him. Sumi was the kind of shy that was not a personality choice, but a genuine structural feature of how she processed the world. She communicated mostly by written note, could barely maintain eye contact, and had in her first practice dates managed to convey the conversational ease of someone attending their own surprise funeral. But she had something underneath the terror, a sincerity, a quality visible if you were patient enough to wait for it. And Kazuya, who had become patient about things without fully noticing when it happened, was good with her. Their practice sessions were a masterclass in how quiet 2 people can be in each other's company. Sumi would write notes on her phone and hold them up. Kazuya would respond out loud. She would nod. There would be long pauses that she found comfortable, and he found increasingly educational about how much of conversation he had previously been filling with noise rather than meaning. Slowly, she started speaking, small sentences, careful words. She took him to an aquarium because she had done her research about what he liked and had spent an afternoon on this instead of just picking something random, which was a form of attention that registered on him as significant. They sat in a tunnel under the water with fish moving overhead, and she pointed at things and named them in a quiet voice. He watched her face as she watched the fish. She was genuinely completely absorbed by them. No performance, just real interest. He liked her enormously in that moment, in a way that was completely unentangled and clear. The way you can like someone you are not in love with, which is its own straightforward kind of affection. One afternoon, she asked him quietly when his birthday was. He told her. She ran the answer through whatever calculation she was doing. Then she wrote him a note that said, "I want to do something for it." He thought about that for the rest of the afternoon. On his birthday, she appeared with a present, a hat, one she had chosen carefully. He put it on. She looked at him. He asked if it worked. She wrote, "Yes." Then she added in smaller letters, "I think you look good." He did not know what to do with that information. He said, "Thank you." Oh, she said "you're welcome" out loud, which was an improvement on the note system, and then turned and walked away very quickly. Ruka during all of this had not given up. She had recalibrated, had become somewhat less aggressively present, but she had not given up. She appeared at his part-time job at the karaoke bar one afternoon and proceeded to make his shift considerably more complicated by sitting in the lounge looking determined. She waited until his break. She sat across from him with the patient expression of someone who has decided to have a real conversation, regardless of what the other person would prefer to be doing. She told him she had thought about everything. She said she understood that he was not going to stop feeling what he felt about 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 just because she wanted him to. She said she had watched them, not in a creepy way, just in the way that you notice things when you care about someone, and she had come to a conclusion. She said she's going to leave the job when she becomes an actress. When that happens, you won't have a reason to keep the arrangement. You need to say something before that. He looked at her. She was right, and they both knew it, and he could see in her face that saying it had cost her something. He thanked her. She looked at the table. She said she was not doing it for him. She was doing it because she respected honesty. He was not sure that was entirely true, but he respected it anyway. 𝐂𝐿𝐴, during one of their family gatherings to celebrate absolutely nothing in particular except the ongoing existence of everyone, produced a ring, an old one, her engagement ring from her late husband, who had given it to her in the specific context of a story that had apparently involved a mountain, a very bad weather forecast, and a large quantity of optimism. She held it out to 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆. 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 started to say something. 𝐂𝐿𝐴 told her she wanted her to have it, not as a symbol of engagement to Kazuya specifically, though she noted she would not complain if that also happened. She wanted her to have it because she had come to love her. She wanted her to know that even when Sayuri was gone, even when the people who had always been the fixed points of her world were no longer there, she would still have them. 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 sat with this. The ring was small and old and very real. She accepted it. She put it on a different finger. Kazuya watched this happen from across the room and felt approximately everything at once. Sayuri Ichinose asked to speak to Kazuya alone one afternoon when 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 had stepped out. She asked what he thought of 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆's acting. He said she was extraordinary. She was the best thing in everything she did. She was the reason you could not look away. Sayuri told him that 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 was strong and everyone believed it. She said the strength was real, but it was not the whole story. She said 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 had been lonely for a very long time, that she went to sleep alone and woke up alone and carried everything alone because she had learned very early that the people you counted on went away. She said she worried that this had become so deep in her that she would not know how to let someone in, even if she wanted to. She looked at Kazuya. She asked him quietly and directly to see 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆, to actually see all of it, and to stay when he did. Kazuya looked at the old woman in the hospital bed and said without hesitation, without any of his usual verbal hedging, "I love her." Sayuri smiled. She said she knew. She told him to tell 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 that, not her. The doctor pulled 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 aside. Sayuri did not have much time. Weeks, maybe months. 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 walked home alone through streets that felt tonight like they belonged to a different city. Kazuya was waiting outside her door. She didn't ask how he knew. She just stood there. He asked if she was okay. She said she was fine. He said she didn't have to be fine. She was quiet for a long time. She told him her grandmother kept saying she wanted to see her on screen before she went. She kept saying she wanted to see her in a film, and 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 kept failing auditions and kept telling her it was just a matter of time, and then stopped talking. Kazuya waited. Then he said he had an idea, a bad one, possibly the worst one he'd ever had, but she should hear it. She looked at him. Something in his expression was different. Not the nervous, over-correcting man she was used to. Something steadier, something that had been slowly, quietly building. He said they would make a film. She would star in it. He would run the campaign. They would find the people. They would make a real movie, and Sayuri would see it before she was gone. She would see 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 on screen like she always wanted. 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 stared at him. This man, this disaster magnet, ferry jumping, building, entering, ramen eating, perpetually an over his head man who had decided that the correct response to a dying grandmother's wish was to produce an independent film. She called him insane. He agreed. She said it was going to be a disaster. He agreed again. She said okay. Then they stood in the hallway, the weight of it settling around them. Two people who had started as a transaction and ended up somewhere they hadn't planned for. Kazuya looked at her, and this time he didn't look away. He told her she was the only one he wanted. Not mommy, not Ruka, her. And he knew she was going to leave this job, and he knew he was probably not who she would choose if she was choosing, and he knew the rules, and he knew what this was supposed to be. He took a breath. He said he just wanted to say it once, out loud, to an actual person, to her. 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 looked at him for a long moment. Something moved across her face that he hadn't seen before. Something real. She stepped forward, and this time she didn't look away either. The crowdfunding campaign launched at midnight. By morning, it had fully funded. By noon, it had tripled. People came from everywhere. 𝐂𝐴 organized. Ruka, in a moment that everyone found genuinely moving, sent a message saying she would handle props. She would not be there in person, but she would help help. They filmed on weekends, chaotic and low budget, and half the dialogue improvised because the script kept changing. There was one scene where the lighting was technically wrong and the sound was slightly off, and Chizuru did something in the middle of it that nobody had planned and everybody agreed was too true to fix. The screening was in Sayuri's hospital room, a tablet and a portable speaker. Nagomi sitting beside the bed, holding her friend's hand the way old friends hold hands when they have both understood that time is short and contact matters. 40 minutes. Chizuru's face on the screen doing what she was made to do in a film that a man who loved her had built from nothing because the alternative was not trying. When it ended, Sayuri was crying, Nagomi was crying, Kazuya was crying and trying not to be visible about it. Sayuri said her grandfather would have stood up and cheered, that he would have stood up right here in this room and made everyone in the building hear him. And Chizuru, who had been holding it together with both hands for the entirety of this arrangement, finally could not. She covered her face. Her shoulders moved. She cried in a way she had not allowed herself to cry in a very long time. Not the controlled professional composure, the actual version, the one underneath all the rest. Nagomi took Sayuri's hand, said something about tea, said it urgently. Both of them shuffled out with the exaggerated speed of elderly people, pretending they are not doing what they are obviously doing. The door clicked. The room was quiet. Kazuya crossed it. He sat next to her. He did not say anything. He was just there. She looked up at him, without the warmth deployed, without the composure, without any of the years of practiced self-containment. Just her face as it actually was, young and tired and frightened, and more beautiful than anything he had seen in his life. He told her that whatever came next, whatever she decided, wherever this went, he was not going anywhere. She said his name. He said yeah. She told him to be quiet, and she put her head against his shoulder. He held completely still. Like if he moved, it would break. Outside the room, two grandmothers were drinking tea and making plans that involved a very specific number of grandchildren. Inside, two people were in the only real conversation they had ever managed to have since the beginning. The one without any professional framework or rental timer or agreed upon terms. Just this, the actual thing, the thing that had been quietly becoming itself for months without either of them being willing to name it. He had rented his way to something he did not know could not be rented. She had performed warmth for so long that she had at some point she could not identify, stopped performing it with him and started meaning it. And now they were here, on the other side of all of it. The arrangements, the timers, the one-star review, the ferry, the burning building, the love hotel, the mixer, the hangover medicine left in a refrigerator, the phone case, the batting cage, the uniform date, the photo booth, the plant that had been watered for 6 weeks. Here, the real thing, which, if you think about it, was all either of them had ever wanted. He just had to rent his way to it first. The hot spring trip deserves its own careful telling, because it is where several things that had been accumulating finally crystallized into something visible. Nagomi had organized it with the efficiency of a woman who has decided something and is simply managing the logistics. She invited Sayuri. She booked the rooms. She informed Kazuya that he and Chizuru would be joining them, framing this less as an invitation and more as a scheduling notice. Kazuya said yes because saying no to Nagomi is not something that is available to him as an option, and also because some part of him, the part he was still not entirely acknowledging, wanted to go. They arrived at the inn in the mountains and discovered the room situation. One room, one bed. Nagomi presented this with the serene composure of a woman who is absolutely responsible for it and has no intention of admitting that. She said she was sure they would manage. She said it with a face that held nothing but innocent confusion. Kazuya and Chizuru stood in the doorway and had a conversation entirely without words that went approximately, "This is deliberate. Yes, obviously, this is deliberate. Do we address it? I think we do not address it. Agreed, we do not address it." Chizuru put her bag down and announced she was going to the hot spring to tell the grandmothers the truth. She walked down the hall with purpose. Kazuya sat on the edge of the bed and waited. At the hot spring, Nagomi was already in the water, up to her shoulders, looking like someone who had been waiting for this specific moment for some time. She began talking before Chizuru had fully settled into the water. She talked about gratitude, about love, about what it means to watch a grandchild find their person. She talked about how Sayuri had told her that Chizuru used to cry herself to sleep sometimes in the hospital from exhaustion and loneliness and the particular grief of carrying everything alone. She said that when she had first seen Chizuru with Kazuya, she had seen someone who for the first time was not carrying it alone. She did not need to understand the full complexity of the situation. She needed only to know what she saw when she looked at Chizuru's face. Chizuru sat in the hot water and let all the prepared sentences dissolve. She asked what Nagomi would do if she found out there were things about the situation that were not what they seemed. Nagomi said she had lived 73 years. She had learned the difference between a person who was performing goodness and a person who was good. She already knew which one she was looking at. Chizuru closed her eyes. The steam moved. The truth stayed inside her. When she came back to the room, Kazuya had attempted to set up a meal from room service and achieve something that could charitably be described as impressionistic. She laughed, a real laugh, without managing it, and then they ate on the floor together, talking until midnight, saying the kind of thing that only gets said when the situation is strange enough that the usual defenses feel less necessary. He talked about his grandfather, who had died when he was was in middle school and how for months afterward he had kept expecting him to be there. She talked about her parents, briefly and without detail, in the way you talk about things that are too large to summarize, but that the other person deserves to know the shape of. When it was time to sleep, she told him to take the bed. He offered the floor. She said it was one bed and they were adults, and they could share it without it meaning anything. He lay on his side in the dark, listening to the sounds the building made, listening to her breathing slow on the other side of the mattress. He said something, quietly, to the ceiling. Not quite a confession, just words that had been accumulating and needed somewhere to go. She heard them. She kept her eyes closed. She did not respond. In the morning, neither of them mentioned it, but they were both, for the rest of the day, slightly quieter, slightly more careful with each other, like people who have been near something fragile and are still calibrating the distance. Chizuru's acting life ran underneath everything else in the story, in a way that did not always surface, but that shaped everything about her. She had fallen in love with it, genuinely and completely, when she was 10 years old and watched her grandmother's films for the first time. Not the recent ones, the early ones from when Sayuri was young, shot in a way that made the colors look slightly unreal, the way color looks in old photographs. She had watched her grandmother on screen do something that she did not have a word for yet, but that she would later understand as presence, the capacity to fill a shot with the weight of a real person's inner life, so that the audience feels they are watching someone actually experience something rather than perform the experience of something. She had wanted to do that. She had said so out loud to her grandfather, who had taken it seriously immediately and without qualification. He had said, "Then that is what you will do." He had helped her find classes. He had driven her to the first audition. He had stood outside the room and waited, and when she came out and said she had not gotten the part, he had said, "Good, now you know what it feels like, do it again." He had said this for 18 auditions before she got one. He had never said anything other than, "Do it again." When he died, suddenly, in the middle of an ordinary afternoon, the kind of death that arrives without any warning or preparation, she had run to the shrine. She had gone up the steps and prayed with the specific, focused desperation of someone who is trying to make a bargain with forces she has no evidence of but cannot afford to disbelieve right now. He had not come back. She had sat on the steps of the shrine for a long time after they told her he was gone, and then she had stood up and she had gone to the audition she had scheduled for the fall. The thing about Chizuru's professional warmth, the thing that Kazuya had been so angry about when he read those reviews, the thing that had felt like the most significant betrayal, was that it had, by some strange alchemy, become the opposite of what he had originally understood it to be. He had read it as the absence of something real. He had seen it as evidence that nothing in their interactions was genuine, that she was an empty vessel performing a role. And he had been wrong, which is a thing that happens with evidence when you are interpreting it through a framework that does not fit. What the professional warmth actually was, he understood later, was a discipline, a practice. The same way that an athlete's movement looks effortless because of years of practice, not despite it. The warmth looked easy because she had worked very hard to develop it. She had built it because she needed it. She had needed it because the world, in her experience, did not extend warmth freely to people who needed it. And if you wanted warmth in your life, you had to learn to generate it yourself and then offer it outward and hope that some of it came back. The professional warmth was not a performance. It was a survival mechanism that had become a skill that had become, over time, part of who she was. The distinction mattered. It mattered because it meant that when she smiled at Nagomi in the hospital, she was not pretending. She was giving something real. And it meant that when she let the smile drop behind the fish tank at the aquarium and showed him the precise, unguarded version of herself, that was also real. Both were real. She was a person who contained both. He had misunderstood at first which one was the mask. Neither was the mask. They were both her. He understood this the way you understand things that come not from being told but from paying attention over time. He understood it in the batting cage and in the karaoke bar and in the mixer and in the hospital corridor at midnight and on the step in the snow. He assembled it piece by piece the way you assemble a picture when you do not know at first what you are looking at. And when it finally came together and he could see the shape of it clearly, he felt something he had not expected. Not triumph, not vindication. Something more like the specific gratitude of having been allowed to see something true, like being handed a key you had been looking for and realizing it had been in your coat pocket the whole time. Nagomi produced the ring at a family gathering that had been organized around the ostensible purpose of celebrating the end of the semester and the actual purpose of getting everyone in the same room at the same time. It was a small ring, old, an engagement ring from her late husband, the one he had given her on a mountain in bad weather with a large quantity of optimism, and a speech that she sometimes still recited to herself when she needed to remember that things could be good. She held it out to Chizuru. Chizuru started to say something. Nagomi told her she was not asking for anything in return. She was giving something. She wanted Chizuru to know that the people who cared about her were not going away. She wanted her to have something solid. She said, "This has been through a lot." It held up. Chizuru looked at the ring for a long time. She put it on a different finger. Not the ring finger, a different one, but she put it on. And she looked at it on her hand. And she said, very quietly, "Thank you." Nagomi said, "Of course." and the family gathering continued around them, loud and ordinary, and neither of them drew attention to what had just happened. But Kazuya had seen it. He had been standing across the room, and he had seen the whole thing, and he had felt something that he had not had words for then and did not have words for now. Sitting in the hallway, outside the hospital room, where Chizuru was crying for real, and the grandmothers were drinking tea, but that he thought, if he were forced to name it, was probably something in the neighborhood of, this is it, this is what it's for. There's one more thing that needs to be said before this story ends. Not about what happened, about what it means. Because stories like this one get told all the time. Boy meets girl, boy loses girl. Boy does a series of increasingly inadvisable things in the vicinity of a different girl until the situation is so complicated that the only way out is through. We have all seen this story. We know how it goes. We know the ending from the first 5 minutes, and knowing does not make it less true. That is the thing about certain kinds of stories. They work not because they surprise you, but because they say the thing you already know, in a way that makes you feel it again. Kazuya Kinoshita rented a girlfriend because he was afraid of being alone, and afraid of being seen, and afraid that the person he actually was, the awkward, overcomplicated, ramen-eating, thoroughly ordinary person he actually was not someone that anyone would choose. He rented a girlfriend because he had given up, temporarily but sincerely, on the idea that he was worth choosing freely. And then, through a sequence of events that he did not design and could not have predicted, he discovered that the thing he had been performing, the adequate, presentable, functional version of himself, was not what made him worth choosing. What made him worth choosing was the jumping, the watering of dead plants, the going up instead of down, the dropping of the phone, the willingness to be exactly who he was, in the middle of situations that made it very easy to be something else, and to stay there. He did not know he had this. He found it out by having it tested. That is, generally speaking, the only way you find out what you have. He learned this from a girl he paid by the hour, who turned out, under the professional warmth and the precise voice and the 5-star reviews, to be someone extraordinary who had been doing the exact same thing from the other direction, proving to herself, one audition and one rental booking and one carefully maintained arrangement at a time, that she could survive without needing anything from anyone. And then she met someone who jumped, and something in her recognized it, and she jumped back. And here we are, at the end of the story. That was never really about the arrangement. It was about the two people inside the arrangement who had both given up on something and then found it again in the last place either of them would have thought to look, which is to say, in each other, which is to say, exactly where it always was.